Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from the US, Ahraz Hussain, who is the VP for Product Engineering and Data at Growers Edge. Ahraz, thank you very much for being with me on the show today. As I was telling you before we actually started the recording, I like to keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit more about your background, your journey, and what you're currently up to. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mehmet. Again, thanks for having me. As I said earlier, it's an honor to be on your show. Hey all, my name is Ahraz Hussain. I am the VP of Product Engineering and Data Science at Growers Edge, as Mehmet already alluded to. Growers Edge is an fintech company focused on the agriculture sector. We're based out of the Midwest US and primarily serving farmers and their advisors here in the Midwest US. We have been around for a couple of years and have a few different products in the marketplace. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to learn more about them later. Before I joined Growth Edge, which is where I've been for the last 2.5 years, I spent 7 years at Corteva Agri-Science when it was still known as its subsidiary companies. So I was a part of the pioneer side. Went through the Dow-DuPont merger, spun off into the Corteva business, which was the world's largest publicly traded farm inputs company on the planet. So really exciting times there as well. So I can comfortably say I've spent a decade in agriculture, mostly focused on the US markets. And, it's just been thrilling, a pleasure to see all the innovation that agriculture actually does have, but usually people don't realize. And my background is technology. I have been within the data analytics AI space ever since I've been in ag for the last decade. And I continue pursuing that. I'm really excited about this recent AI boom as well. Now, finally, people are realizing there's more to AI than just some back-end models, which is always fascinating. And people certainly seem more and more open now than ever before. I am primarily from India. That's where I grew up. I did my undergrad in computer engineering, moved to the US about 11 years ago. And yeah, that's a little about my journey, Mehmet.
Thank you very much, Aras, again for being with me. And this is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've done plenty of interviews with people like yourself, Aras, and I think today our topic is a first on the podcast. Um, the intersection of agriculture and technology. Probably, maybe when I was still doing solo episodes in the beginning of the podcast, like 1.5 years ago, I was mentioning about like AgriTech in the sense of, like IoT and so on. But I think, the use cases where technology can intersect with agriculture are much broad, and beyond just, the IoT stuff. So what I want you to do, Aras, is just, give us as audience and people who are interested in tech and, I'm passionate, people knows it. So tell me more about the intersection because you're also doing fintech. So this is really interesting. Like if someone tells me fintech, like agriculture, maybe it will not be the first use case that come to mind. So walk me through a little bit more about, this intersection and what you exactly, you've been doing in this space, especially at your current role at Growers Edge.
Yeah, absolutely, Mehmet. So you're pretty much giving me the floor to go on and on for a couple of hours. I'll try to
Please.
it into a few short minutes. But agriculture has always been very technology first, right? So even today we hear about GMOs, right? Genetically modified seed, et cetera, et cetera. That's all technology. But those things didn't exist 100 years ago. It's due to science and just perseverance of, the innovators and everybody in the space to build those technologies, farmers to adopt those technologies, and everybody hopefully to see the benefit of them. And GMO was just an example that I'm throwing out there. There's so much more to it. In the US, for example, we have huge machines that farmers use to plant seed, to apply fertilizer, to harvest, and a lot of them are now automated. So they can drive themselves, they can take care of the details themselves. You just need somebody to monitor. So think of Tesla, but driving around on a farm harvesting corn, I guess. And obviously, remote sensing, Internet of Things to track soil moisture and other factors have all played a big role in us getting a better sense of the macro ecosystems at first, right? But now micro ecosystems. We in agriculture are talking about microclimate, which is climate at a field level, not even a farm level, at a field. So really at 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres level. And there is definitely a lot that goes into being able to, as a farmer, right, find the right products to go into your fields. A lot of them are new products. A lot of them leverage variable rate technologies. So you only apply, say, fertilizer at a rate that you need to at this part of the field, and different part of the field gets a lot more of it. To be precise, slopes, for example, is where you see runoff of fertilizer. So you want to maybe over apply a little, and areas where fertilizer is going to run off and collect, maybe you want to apply a little less off, right? Because otherwise you're just wasting money, and so on. So that so it's really the hardware. It's a ton of biotechnology, as I just alluded to, and obviously fintech, which is another area where it grows edge, and we've been focused on for the last couple of years. What really is fintech for agriculture? It's effectively how do we deliver. It's answering the question on how do we deliver financial products, be it savings accounts or programs and discounts, or the financing needed to buy inputs, buy a farm, buy equipment, etc. As a farmer, and do it effectively and efficiently. It probably wouldn't come as a surprise that the financial organizations that support agriculture are usually a little specialized. Because, for example, when any one of us goes and buys a house, we get a price based on our credit worthiness or our income or the amount of down payment we're putting down, a bunch of other factors. But in agriculture, these factors drastically vary because the net income for a farmer, it depends on the commodity prices that they can sell the products on. And if commodity prices change up and down year on year, despite the volume of what they can produce, their income changes. How do you really use that and evaluate the risk from a financial perspective to be able to price something and effectively put out a loan that goes out 20 years without any idea of how commodity prices and yields and other factors might look like? And I should talk about yields and output really, right, at a farm level as well, which is massively influenced by weather. And in a bad weather year, yields fall, commodity prices go up. But if it is your farmers that you're working with as a financial institution that didn't do too well, you're going to be hurt, and so on. So it's fintech for ag is really about accessibility. It's really about risk management. It is really about flexibility in terms of the services and terms and everything else that can be offered.
Fantastic, Aras. And, thank you for this detailed explanation and, eye-opening, I would say. Um, so I know, we can't talk technology today without mentioning AI, right? And touching, the AI use cases is, for, agriculture specifically, with this combination of the finance part also as well. Um, and because you lead the product, right? And again, I'm very biased to product people, are as that people know that by now. Um, so how have you seen the acceptance, I would say, from the ultimate users, which for you I think they are the farmers, right? Um so how have you seen the acceptance from them, and how have you seen AI being able to show the kind of the ROI of the value for getting these AI technologies into agriculture?
Now that's a wonderful question, Mehmet, and so many different ways I can answer that. But in a nutshell, most people think farmers are technology averse, even though I can challenge anybody and say that most farmers are using a ton of technologies to monitor their fields, at least in the US. They, use remote sensing to monitor fields, use drones to find specific problems, use drones and other methods to target spray, right? We have seen spray technology among others. So I feel from an AI perspective and in an ROI perspective, there are a couple of different things. AI, in some instances, has been able to drastically reduce expenses very directly without impacting output from the farm, which again is super easy to see the ROI on. And case in point would be variable rate fertilizer applications that I just talked about earlier, or variable rate seeding, as well as various prescriptions around different micronutrients, among others. So AI, as far as that can be used, in some instances, you go take a sample of soil, see what the nutrients there look like, and then go apply whatever nutrients might be missing. The alternate is you use models to simulate what might be using calibration methods, and make a best estimate and use those, which again very directly reduces cost due to it not requiring soil sampling, which is expensive and time consuming both today, unfortunately, and so on. So AI has been around. Obviously, even today, farmers prefer to know the actuals before they go and do something. But so getting information perhaps has not been something that's been replaced by synthetic data sets and analytics just yet. But how that information is used in order to apply prescriptions and take some actions, yes, AI is there today. We've seen a lot of other phenomenal companies such as Syngenta now offering more sophisticated AI-driven models to their farmer advisors, so economists who are leveraging more advanced AI, tools to collect information, which they can then understand and translate and put into actions with their farmer customers and so on. So that's one huge area. The second one, obviously, is we have seen a ton of companies try to evaluate the ROI of different actions and simulate what might be if something is done or not done from an ROI perspective. Now, we've had crop models around for decades, so it's not something drastically new, like it's not leveraging Gen AI or and such, but AI in ag has mostly been a function of what I would say non-black box models. So things that you can explain, you can understand, so you can really understand the implications and the drivers of certain prescriptions that come out of those models. So it might be what seed should I plant to, what crop should I plant to, how can I optimize some very specific things at the farm level.
That's fantastic. And, Ara, thank you for bringing something very interesting, I believe, which is, like how AI is not just about, the Gen AI wave, right? So we keep repeating this also with my guest on every episode almost that, guys, AI has been here for a while. And, it's not only about the chat GPTs and Geminis and all these stuff. So it's like much more than this. Um, one area which I'm also interested in, um, like because you mentioned about this planning, and the crop planning and all these stuff. So, um, like how do you see, this transforming actually from a farming practices, like transforming, the way farmers are used to plan, and because sometimes maybe this has an effect, not only about what they're gonna plant, or maybe what's the best, but also maybe it has some uh, effects on maybe environmental or maybe economic challenges within the agriculture. So, I mean, it's not only about like what should I plant, right? So it might be beyond this. I want to hear from you about the sustainability aspect of it also as well, as if you don't mind.
Absolutely, Mehmet. And we at Growers Edge, and even when I was at Corteva, really work closely with a lot of farmers that are wonderful stewards of their land. And I've had some really interesting conversations personally around sustainability with farmers. And it's really come down to, hey, I own the land. I care about the land. I've had it in the family for generations. Why do you think I don't want to take care of it? Like we are taking care of it, right? That's how the land is still producing and doing well. Obviously, when we think of sustainability from a consumer perspective, we're thinking more about the environmental impact outside literally the farm levels, right? Runoff into rivers of chemicals, or just the degradation of soil in some instances, and so on. So one thing I always like to joke about is I don't want to be a farmer, because there is so many nuances to being a farmer, so many decisions to be made, and you do everything right, and then Mother Nature comes and ruins everything at the last minute when things are looking really good. So it's and all you can do is just sit by and see things go down hill. But there's so many decisions from a planning standpoint, Mehmet. You start with, what crops am I looking at? Am I going to grow crops? Do I want to instead plant some vegetables, or go for, just some longer term trees and whatnot for nuts, etc.? It really depends where you are. And then how am I going to go about doing that? Is it something, for example, a lot of farmers in the US a couple of decades ago used to plant corn after corn after corn, year after year after year. And for those that don't know this, corn is insanely nutrient intensive. It takes a lot of water because you have these huge plants that grow in a matter of months today, and they need an immense amount of nutrition. So a lot of fertilizer, a lot of water, and yeah, and if you keep doing that year after year after year, it will deprive the land of its nutrients. And so over a few decades ago, we saw a lot of crop rotations happen where soybeans are planted with corn here in the US. And now we are seeing more cover crops in the wintertime to replenish some of the nutrients, which very indirectly, maybe not in year one, two, or three, but over time reduces fertilizer costs for farmers when they plant, corn in the summertime, for example, and so on. So we are seeing a lot of transition to more crops in the rotation. So you aren't planting the same crop. We are seeing a lot more smartness around how much fertilizer should I apply. While it is also great from a sustainability perspective, it is also great from a financing perspective because fertilizer is probably the most expensive thing you're going to use at a farm. And then, of course, it's all the other government incentives and programs we have in the U.S. carbon credits, where farmers who choose to, transition into some very specific practices, like they reduce tillage or some fertilizers on the farm level, etc., get compensated for reducing emissions, or more importantly, for capturing carbon, for example, or reducing carbon emissions, etc., very directly as well.
Perfect. Now, one area you mentioned previously, but I want to re-highlight on it also, Aras, which is I'm a little bit biased because, whenever I hear the word risk and risk management, I get hooked for plenty of reasons, related to my career, or maybe. So when we talk about, you know, risk for farmers, of course, there are plenty, right? But with your current work, I mean, and in the again utilizing the technology to reduce these risks. So if you can walk us through, what kind of risk we're talking about here, and how the technology is helping to reduce these risks, knowing that you have pioneered something like the crop plan prescription warranties, right? So um, walk us through a little bit this area.
Yeah, absolutely, Mehmet. So, we so in agriculture, right? You said it. There are so many different risks. The risks of being able to produce enough volume, the risk of finding a buyer that will pay you the right price, and everything else in between. If you make a poor decision buying a specific seed or a specific product that underperforms drastically, it can have catastrophic implications on your outcomes. You buy a land, and you have huge payments to make, and then all of a sudden you go have 1 2 not so good years, and you can't continue making the payment. So there is a ton of challenges if you're a farmer at a farm level, and most of them have very direct financial implications. Knowing how across the globe a lot of farmers are farming in a very personal capacity, like they don't have businesses that run the farms, it's literally them taking on personal liabilities and whatnot. A bad year could mean they can't afford to pay, for anything personal, even in a lot of instances. Risk becomes a big deal. So here in the US, we are really fortunate to have a lot of governmental oversight and support when it comes to farming. We have what's known as federal crop insurance, which is subsidized by the government, by the way, and which offers farmers a pretty decent level of protection. So, and most farmers, it started with what we like to call as yield protection. So in bad weather years, the insurance can be purchased and it'll pay for extreme weather events, and farmers are going to be protected against those. And then it evolved to be more revenue protection. Now there are, which locks in a price for your commodity or products that you're growing. And then we're moving on to margin protections, which is, hey, based on the last 10 years of how your margins have looked like, we'll try to make sure that your margin stay consistent, which, really helps in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we've seen parametric insurance, etc., come into place as well. So, without getting too detailed into the insurance side of the equation, Growers Edge realized really early on that everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody that serves a farmer with their products, claims that their products are going to have a yield advantage of sorts. I still remember sifting through a local newspaper here in Iowa, and on one page was a product that I was involved with claiming a 5 bushel advantage, and 2 pages later there was a literal competing product claiming a 4 bushel advantage on our product. So clearly one of them was right, one of them wasn't right, and it really came down to some specifics on how the trials were done. But more importantly, the message to every grower is that, hey, our products perform and others don't. And, we as a retail organization have the agronomic prowess to make the best recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. So a cropland agronomic warranty effectively underwrites the plans that retailers and manufacturers of products and service providers, and really people that are providing advice as well, are able to leverage to back their promises with an actual financial number. So, say if a farmer buys a product that promises a 5 bushel advantage and they don't see any yield advantage, if anything, they lose yields, well, we'll protect them against those yield losses. And obviously, when you're trying some new products out, which again, every farmer in the US at least tries something new or the other every single year, having some level of added assurance helps. Now, our warranty, the prescription warranty, also applies to sustainability, where as a farmer who's reducing, say, fertilizer on their farm levels, they're really stressed about how much yields would they lose, because it's not a linear curve, right? There is a part of diminishing returns, and our goal with our partners really has been around finding that diminishing return point, right? The optimal point where they get the highest ROI. And the warranty empowers the farmers to make those bold decisions, knowing that if, you know, all the advisors and themselves end up making a decision that is suboptimal, that they have some sort of protection. Now, why it is an insurance is because everybody doesn't get it. It's not covering extreme weather circumstances, which is where the governmental and other private policies come into play. What we're effectively covering is the top line risk with farmers that buy into a recommendation, be sustainability or something else, be it one that comes through input manufacturers, say a fertilizer company, a seed company, or anybody else in between. Right now, we've seen a lot of biological companies emerge and that are excited about being able to take our warranty product to the market to drive a whole new business segment, as well as retailers, of course, and advisors to farmers, like consultants around crops or agronomists making recommendations. So in a nutshell, the warranty helps build trust around products, practices, and services at a farm level, where we do have statistical significance that we can prove upfront. The difference being, instead of us trying, or retailers and others trying to prove those statistical facts to every single farmer, they can just give us the evidence, we'll endorse it, and now the warranty can be pushed behind everything, and farmers have minimal financial risk as a consequence of that.
Fantastic. One of the things that, really it's exciting also, Aras, is, about how also, like, I'm asking you, like, maybe a little bit from a product perspective, or as a leader of the product development yourself, Aras. Um, so how do you think this is a little bit complicated? Because here, like, the stakeholders are like, you have multiple stakeholders, right? So because you're doing something that intersect, of course, technology, farming, and finance, which is fintech part. So you have to talk to, I don't know, like, your stakeholders are multiple here. So, how do you tailor, I would say, the messaging for each one of these stakeholders, to make sure that first, we are able to get exactly, what are, like, their pain points, and so you put this into the roadmap of the services and the products you're building. At the same time, also, tailoring the message. For example, if you developed something or you had an idea, so to convey it to them. So, and I'm asking you this from your position as the head of the product, as the VP of the product here, Aras.
Yeah, absolutely, Mehmet. That's a really great question. And just for context, the cropland warranty, for example, helps farmers, retailers, input manufacturers. We have service providers like companies that help go out on the farm and spray things. We have food companies, grain companies, all that work with us, as well as some government, public and private institutions that are trying to address sustainability, among others. So we do have a huge array of partners that we work with. And it really comes back to, I think, step one for us has always been finding value propositions, right? Or what I like to call unit economics. Because at the end of the day, if there isn't a way for everybody to win, it will not be a sustainable product offering program in the marketplace, right? So we want to structure things in a way where, say, we're working with the retailer. The retailers have a way to win, and farmers have a way to win, as well as us. Because obviously, we are taking the risk on. We don't want to be in a spot where uh, things financially don't look good for us. Like, it has to be financially beneficial to all involved, and definitely in the highest sense to the farmers who are effectively the beneficiary, the customers that we are so obsessed with serving, and that's our purpose, really, to help the growers be more bold and confident in anything and everything that's asked of them. So really, it comes back to step one, unit economics of things, the go-to-market plans and concepts. We have a lot of concepts, Mehmet. I can tell you that we validate. As our director of product management will tell you, that fail early, validate things cheap, take things to market before we build stuff. Building is always complex with tools and complex processes. And so for us, it's really been about, hey, let's build a concept real quick, see if the stakeholders understand the value proposition clearly, not just for themselves, but for the counterparts. Whereas, they all talk, the agriculture industry often is huge, but small enough, right? Everybody's able to connect to each another. Like a food company will be talking to a farmer, a grain elevator is going to be talking to a retailer. Like, there's all connections. And as long as we can communicate the value add to each of those layers, it becomes an easy conversation to get a lot of early feedback on, yep, this might work. And more often than not, we start with piloting something, then taking it to market at a very small scale without obviously the comprehensive end-to-end processes and technology in place. And as soon as we get some validation and a better understanding of the pain points, that becomes a great place to evaluate if it is worth iterating or totally pivoting away from it in different ways. So messaging again, comes back to being able to communicate the value add specifically when somebody's paying and somebody's, participating and having to do the work on what is in it for them. Even when I talk, for example, ag retailers, those are, the dealers, seed dealers, sellers of fertilizer, et cetera, et cetera. Even they have hierarchies, right? Where the corporate leadership might understand the value, but the salesperson effectively wants to just sell and move on, right? They don't want to be here explaining value add of the warranty, et cetera, et cetera. So it really comes back to how do we make sure at a high level there is unit economies, there's value add to everybody, and then all the way down to making sure we have the exact right touch points at each level of the user journey, the customer journey, the partner journeys. And the easier we can make it, the more transparent we can make it. I think that's been the key for us to see success.
Absolutely. And talk, continuing on this point also, Aras, like I'm very interested also to understand, like, from this again, because you were talking about intersection of two things, actually three, like agriculture, fintech, I mean, and AI and all this. So from uh in let's call it the inclusion of the smallholder farmers, right? So what kind of challenges and opportunities you see in bridging, this gap between the smallholder farmers, um, I'm talking here about financial gaps mainly, through the solutions, I mean, that you have developed.
Oh, I'm so happy, Mehmet, you brought this up because that is a very personal passion of mine. There's so many farmers across the planet. Interestingly, most of the acres and most of the land belongs to a few farmers. Most majority of the farmers, like in the US, I believe something like 85% of all farmers are considered smallholder farmers. Smallholder farmers are defined as farmers making below a specific threshold in revenue or farming below a specific threshold of acres. And it really varies geography to geography, across the planet. But smallholder farmers are more often than not underserved for a variety of reasons. There might be a lack of digital financial literacy. There might be the lack of availability of resources. Obviously, if I'm a salesperson, I want to be focusing my time and effort on the highest value customers, not, the lower value customers, which are the smaller farmers more often than not. And so, where really I think fintech has the biggest purpose is with the smallholder farmers, where we eliminate the need of human intervention on little decisions. In the US, where say the average farm is 400 or 500 acres, nobody wants to serve the 50 or 100 acre farm. That's a massively underserved category, and demanding that any human advisor actually serve them becomes tedious because, it's going to be a huge volume, low value, and, you're just going to tire yourself out. So that's really where the value of technology comes in, because we can use technology to serve these farmers, bring them better prices, bring them better financial tools, right? Better interest rates, because all of a sudden now our expenses go down because we don't have enough humans in the loop, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that said, I'm not claiming that technology can eliminate the need for human experts and advisors. I think that's the key role. But I'd say the way our chief marketing officer puts it, like humans when you really need them and technology when you don't. And I think that's the path that we believe in. And, there are all these back office tasks which we can offload from other human advisors, from the farmers to, as such. Today, for example, if a smaller farmer has a bad year and cannot afford to pay back their loans, it's a tedious process to file paperwork, to apply for forgiveness or to see how they can defer payments for a while. Well, technology, you can click a button, and as long as we can validate that, yes, you were in a geography with certain perils around weather events or just poor commodity prices for whatever reason, we can easily extend those things from a more technically enabled standpoint. So it's not just digitizing the manual processes that help smallholder farmers, but also finding the right financial instruments that really, really works for them too. Because otherwise they'll end up paying high interest rates, for example, and having the worst customer service ever because they're really not your biggest customers.
Right. Aras, and I think, one of the benefits, and correct me if I'm wrong also as well, because um, I used to live in places where, like, the farmers really put as they say, the blood, sweat, and tears, and then sometimes if they lose, they say, okay, you know what, like, this is not for us. We're gonna do something else, right? And they move on. And so, what you're telling, do you see it? Do you see it as a way also? Maybe, of course, you're now talking about the US because this is the market you operate in. But I'm talking on a global level. Like, do you see solutions like the ones you have developed being able to contribute in the global food security as well? Because first, of course, we talked about like choosing the right crop and all this stuff, and what I should be uh, doing this year as a farmer. From the second perspective, which is okay, I'm covered also as well. So, and this is maybe, I don't know if you, maybe it's also a passion or maybe a drive for you and the your colleagues to you know let the farmers stay in their land. Do you see this something like that also as well?
Absolutely, Mehmet. I can't tell you how connected the farmers are to their land. Like, that's probably one of the biggest reasons anybody chooses to stay in the farming business is that their connection with the land. Oftentimes that goes generations back, right, within the family. So there is so much to tie farmers to it. I'll give you an example of something that,
Sure.
recent advancements, say in India, where we have, I'm from India, we have a lot of smallholder farmers, right? Literally pouring blood, sweat, like, and then again, I'm not going to claim that it's just India where the blood and sweat is, it's everywhere, like even in the US. But in
Right.
India, we have what I would say massively small scale farmers, right? Farmers that literally early morning, the dad, the mom, and the kids are just going to go walk over to the field and start doing stuff with their hands pretty much because they can't afford equipment, etc. And India is a country which didn't have a lot of proper insurance mechanisms for farmers. Specifically, when I'm a farmer, I don't have the money, like, and I'm just living it month to month or, fairly short term crops. I'm likely not going to get insurance among other things, right? Specific, partly because I don't understand how it works, partly because it needs me to sign papers and I don't know how to do that, and partly because the uh, sellers of insurance, right? The agents aren't readily available. It's not till they show up that I'm going to sign up for it, kind of a deal. India did pivot to parametric insurance. They're one of the biggest parametric insurance companies, and which has been phenomenal because instead of complicating things, they went the simpler route, which is, hey, if it is in this month, if you're growing this crop, because we know this is going to be critical 2 months for the said crop, if it floods or if it's really less in terms of moisture, you get a flat payout. X dollars because we're not hurting crops. So they eliminated a lot of the administrative overheads and made it super simple for any farmer with literally a cell phone or access to somebody with a cell phone to just go get it. And in my book, like that is a great book serving smallholder farmers because you eliminated a ton of barriers around having a business registered, barriers around having a permanent address, barriers around having to pick and choose things and prove things and so on. So it becomes a whole lot easier. And I think things like that across the globe we see, right? We see a ton of great innovation here in the US where the governments are giving more and more money to for people that want to get into farming. Now, here's a fact. The number of farmers on the planet has gone down and it continues drastically every single decade. And partly because farms have become bigger, the average farm is much bigger now than ever before, which isn't the worst thing, because diversification is always a good idea. But the worst part is that so many people choose to leave farming and not enough people want to get into farming because of all these nuances. And I think that's where a lot of the government supported programs, as well as a lot of these private programs, like, insurance is among others, really, really come into play and have a huge value add in helping give new farmers, small farmers, farmers who are just trying to transition the farms over to the next generations, among others, the right mechanisms, both from a security standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint to go do that. And then obviously, I won't discount the value of literacy. A lot of farmers still don't know across the planet the value add of all the little things that go into a farm and how to quantify those things and really think of it from an ROI perspective.
Absolutely. Um, what are, and this is maybe a traditional question, but I like to ask, especially for expert people like yourself, Aras, what are like some of the emerging technologies that you see it fit with this agri-fintech, if I want to call it this way, that you are most excited about?
The one thing I personally am really excited about, and this is the data side of my role talking, is more dynamic pricing. I feel pricing in agriculture across the planet is a black box today. Farmers don't really understand what something should cost, what it costs to them, what it costs to somebody else. Not everybody gets a flat price on the same product. So the same product might cost differently to different farmers, depending on how you obtain it, how you source it, where you get it from, how much of it you get it from, how early are you committing to that, because supply chain nuances are a big deal in ag. And your timing of making your decisions, your choices, all those things can affect prices and so on, all the way from for physical products to, let's say, buying land. Like you and I, for the same piece of land, likely are going to pay different prices, Mehmet, because of
Right.
evaluate and oftentimes, using some personal factors as well that might play into it. And then, of course, it's the financing pricing, interest rates. And so I feel dynamic pricing perhaps is the single most amazing thing that can happen to ag, where pricing is transparent. So when I say dynamic, I'm talking about it being transparent, and then it being exactly what you pay for something is what it should be worth pretty much to you, right? For example, from a risk standpoint, today most farmers are paying similar prices for insurance, yet, you know, the risk levels might not exactly be the same.
Same.
Uh, and so on. Now I realize there is nuance around value-based pricing as well. Why should you pay more for something? Because it's worth more to you or versus me, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where I think it comes down to the right choices. And that's the second thing I'm really excited about is the placement of products on a field level. So advisors, pretty much robo advisors, AI-driven advisors, telling you here's a commodity to plant, and here's a couple of things you need to make sure you do to maximize your ROI. And guess what? When that does happen, we'll be ready with our warranty to back it up too. So as to provide a lot more confidence in any prescriptions that come out into the world of ag. Obviously, I'm not going to discount remote sensing, drones,
Of course.
driving tractors, et cetera, all are going to play a big role, as well as more app-driven delivery of things as well. So farmers across the planet in remote places with just maybe hopefully access to a mobile phone or maybe a computer can access information at the very least, and ideally products and finance.
When you mentioning this, Aras, it's something like I just imagine it. I'm not sure if it's possible or no, because when you said, about this dynamic pricing, because, for example, we discussed before, like how retailers and, e-commerce, because at the end of the day, there's a suppliers in the middle. I can understand this, but I'm imagining this, central system where, because the farmers know the demand, right? And they can do kind of forecasting. Okay, at this time of the year, and I'm sure like the technology will allow us also to change when we can plant what somehow, right? So instead of having also the waste that usually happens, so we have like kind of a balanced, what how you call it, like demand forecasting. So we don't have wastage, we don't have like lack of that also as well. So like it's kind of the perfect world. Like I'm really exciting. It's really exciting to see the future from now, and amazing advancement in that space. Aras, like really the time flew literally with you. If you want to, have like final thoughts for today for the audience, and where people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, and so thank you, Mehmet. Time did indeed fly. This was a real fun conversation. Absolutely. Hopefully, our listeners find it valuable as well. The final thoughts I would have really is, agriculture is amazing, as amazing as any other sector you can think about. If anything, I would say it's a lot more complicated because weather plays a much bigger role in everything agriculture, even more than you know transportation. Because transportation might delay your trip by 2 days, but 2 days of bad weather can totally throw a year
Right.
of work off for a farmer. So, I would say a little more compassion, empathy for anybody farming around us would this go a long way. And I know people have that. I implore everybody to ask more questions. I implore everybody to really understand where really their food is coming from. It doesn't come from a grocery store. It comes from farmers working hard, and any chance you get to engage, interact with rural communities, with farmers, to learn more about things firsthand, it's always going to be an enriching experience. I highly recommend people taking up on that. The fact that there is so many technologies in play in ag, and so much opportunity yet to innovate and drive new things. That's another area for all our technology and business listeners to think about and feel excited about. Ag tech as a sector has obviously been interesting. We've seen more IoT driven innovation than most others, but I feel there's a lot more to come in ag. And we'll definitely see highly optimized markets, Mehmet, and you said it, in the future. And that's really tying things together, right? It's ag, the food industries, as well as the consumer markets all coming together and driving things better for generally a better planet, a better future for all, including farmers and consumers. So yeah, I'm excited as much as you are for the future, and I believe it's going to be a good one.
Where to find you, Aras, if someone want to connect?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. Ahraz Hussain is my name. Luckily, there's not a lot of Ahraz Hussains out there, so I shouldn't be hard to find. You can also reach me on my email, ahraz.hussain@growthsedge.com.
Great. So people, they don't have to, search a lot. Because I'm gonna put the link in the show notes. So if you are listening on your favorite podcasting app, you can find, uh, the link that Ahras just mentioned. I mean, on the link on the file, his LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Or if you are watching this, you can find it on YouTube. Aras, really, I enjoyed the conversation. As I said at the beginning, this is the first time we discuss agri tech, but also there is a spice of fintech in the play also as well, which is fantastic. And I'm always, biased about things that have impact. And definitely, the field you are in has a great impact. I always, tell my family, one of my dreams is to when I want to retire. So it's not, I don't call it retirement, but I mean living in a farm and being a farmer. Because when I was kid, I knew this space, and it's something really we should not lose it as humans. And I advise everyone, at least if you can, visit a farm and see the farmers one day, and then relate that to the technology and what Ahraz discussed with us today, and then you will understand the impact. So thank you again, Ahraz, for the time. I really appreciate it. And this is for the audience. So if you are new to this podcast, you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give us a thumb up, subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming back, thank you for doing so. I really appreciate all your encouragement. I really appreciate all what you do to keep this podcast going and to keep us getting in the top 100 ranks in different countries. So thank you very much for this. And as I say always, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.